Joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, decisions, and situations in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact our freedoms.
Please become a monthly supporter of the State of Freedom at freedomstate.us as we continue to expand the voice of liberty across Louisiana and beyond.
Meet the world's first living, full-spectrum, certified organic CBDA hemp extract. Ness's hemp oil was extracted from seed to bottle without chemicals, solvents, or heavy metals, and it surpasses world-class standards for purity. This pure and powerful CBDA has been proven to reduce aches and pains, ease mental tension, and promote better sleep. To get yours today, visit the Shop Our Partners page at freedomstate.us. Welcome to the State of Freedom, everyone, where we are grounded in faith in the Constitution, and we are committed to giving voice to the truth, living with courage, and taking action. It is Tuesday, January 27th. It's 10 a.m. Central, and it looks like me and my co-host are twinning today. Chris, we're wearing the same outfit.
Danielle, it must be some sort of a subconscious spiritual connection, because I want the listeners to know that I did not call you last night and ask what you were going to be wearing today. Okay, I don't do that anymore. I'm more secure now.
I'm thankful for that. Well, I am Danielle Walker, and I'm joined by my friend, co-host, and twin for the day, the watchdog in chief of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, Chris Alexander. We are coming to you live on Voice of the People USA TV and radio network on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. As always, you can catch us later on our audio-only podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcast. And we are honored today to have retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General Blaine Holt with us. He is a battle-tested command pilot with 3,900 plus flying hours. He was awarded a Bronze Star for his work in leading critical logistics through chaos in Kyrgyzstan, during the Afghan surge. He's a former top U.S. military rep at NATO and the irascible disruptor who is now president of Xeriant, and a fearless voice on national security, geopolitics, and cutting through the noise. He's a commentator and author on Newsmax, and that's why we can't see him live, because he's got a contractual obligation to them, but he is joining us with audio, and he is the host of Dangerous Intellectuals, an incredible podcast on the biggest issues facing America today. Welcome to the show, General Holt.
It's absolutely my pleasure. So sorry that my face is just a big black screen, but it's great to be with you, and I really do appreciate you bringing me on.
Well, it's our pleasure, and one day we'll have the technology to have your picture up there instead of just a black screen, but one day at a time over here.
We'll get there. I'll send you the Dangerous Intellectuals logo. That's a better looking graphic than my face.
Oh, come on. All right. Well, let me read the scripture of the day before we get into some hot topics. It's 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. And it says, "My dear brothers and sisters, it's obvious that our ministry among you has proven to be fruitful. And though we had already suffered greatly in Philippi, where we were shamefully mistreated, we were emboldened by faith in God, by faith in our God, to fearlessly preach his wonderful gospel to you in spite of our incredible opposition. Our coming alongside you to encourage you was not out of some delusion or impure motive or an intention to mislead you, but we have been approved by God to be those who preach the gospel. So our motivation is not pleasing people, but pleasing God, who thoroughly examines our hearts." So let's be encouraged today by the example of Paul and the apostles who joined him in his ministry in Greece. They suffered and were shamefully mistreated, but it only emboldened them to share the good news of what Jesus accomplished through his death and resurrection. And they fearlessly preached on this missionary journey about believing in Jesus, what it looks to live a life that emulates Christ's life on earth. And they were not motivated or moved by the approval of other people. They were motivated by a desire to please the Lord, the only one who could truly judge their hearts.
Can you imagine, Danielle, if we went through life gauging everything we did based upon the approval of others? We wouldn't do anything that mattered. We would just become part of the herd, and we would live a life that we would look back on and realize, sadly enough, that we did nothing of any real significance. So
Yeah.
that is a great example that Paul and really all of the early Christian leaders set for us to move forward and to do what you know is right, even if you have to face resistance and criticism for doing so. And I'm sure that our guest today, General Blaine Holt, has faced enough criticism in his career because he's accomplished so many things for the country. General Holt, thank you for joining the State of Freedom today for a little while, sir.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And what a great scripture to start out with. I think that Paul was guiding us all and still does to this day to that you're not to be a wallflower in your faith. You're to be standing up with the armor of God on in Ephesians 6 and carrying out these missions and doing it with discernment. But this is these days that we're in, this is no time for a passive Christian who shows up on Easter and Christmas and says, "Yeah, me too." This is
Yeah.
not that time.
Absolutely. St. Paul would not have been a willing part of the Me Too generation, General.
Well, even amongst his peers, he had some relational issues. So
Yeah,
Paul was the original irascible. He was he was a handful.
absolutely.
But he was quite the teacher. And then the other thing about Paul that you know I think is so useful for these days. You always see folks everywhere going, well, clearly this time is the end of times. It's the end of days. It's here. And 30 years ago, you'd see, well, clearly this is it. I can see the setup for Ezekiel 38 right now before my very eyes. And 50 years ago, oh, this is Isaiah 19. Well, Paul was like that. Paul was like, it's going to be the day after tomorrow, kids. Like,
Yep.
Christ is coming back any second now, and it's good to be prepared for that because you have no idea, because you shall not know the time or the place, but or the hour. But I think what we should do is follow his good advice in Timothy 6, which is you stay in this thing and you do what you're called to do, and the Lord will tell you when, well done, my good and faithful servant.
That's a great point, General. I can't remember who said this, and maybe I can look it up and find out, but there was a great leader in the past who said, people talk a lot about when the world's going to come, when Christ is going to return. I don't really worry about that. He said, fortunately, that's not my responsibility. When he does return, hopefully I'll be sitting at my desk doing something that honors him.
Hmm.
That's exactly right. You
You
don't
know,
want to
Good.
be, you don't want it to be 3 a.m. in the casino going, oh man, now this is not
right?
a,
Exactly.
Exactly.
It's not a good time.
yeah.
But speaking of missions, General, you have almost 4,000 total flying hours, right?
Yes. And if you're an airline pilot, that's very little. But if you're a military pilot, that's a whole heck of a lot. And 300 of them were combat. The bigger thing is I adored my flying career. I wanted to fly since I was 3 years old. And I got to fly 5 different jets. One was just a little bit of dessert that the Belgians gave me in their F-16, but 135 countries and a whole lot of missions and just wonderful people, amazing people, and the camaraderie that comes with it. And then at some point, you got to grow up and put the flying helmet up on the shelf, and you got to manage things. And I did a little bit of that before jumping out and trying my hand at business and startups and that type of thing.
Yeah. But 300 of your flying hours were combat missions.
Hmm. That's right.
Wow.
You got to you have that moment. I remember my very first time in a heavy airplane. We were doing this operation called WW Mogadishu, and
Oh gosh.
as a co-pilot, we're taking off in this 1965 rickety C-141, and we're climbing out, and that's when we got some small arms fire. Luckily, nothing tagged our airplane. We showed up with the exact same metal that we had taken off with, but in Cairo. But that's where the eye opener was. It's like, wow, somebody meant me harm today.
Wow.
Oh, okay, new world.
General, I've
Yeah.
got to ask you a really interesting question. It's
Mhm.
really a human interest question, personal question. What was your psychological frame of mind when you were on a combat mission? Obviously, there is significant risk inherent in any type of combat mission. But as a pilot,
Mhm.
what was your psychological mind frame, and did it ever occur to you that this could be my last mission? I mean, what goes through a combat pilot's head in those moments?
Yeah, I don't think those are there have been moments where I've been like, "Oh boy, this might be the day I'm gonna be meeting the big guy." But those were not really combat missions. I think when it's about combat, the first thing you remember is you're a member of a team. And if you're the leader of that aircraft, if you're the aircraft commander, that team is counting on you. So, the rule of crew aircraft is if you freak out, guess what? Everybody's going to freak out. And if you can, kind of keep your head on a swivel and be calm, but what you do is you're not thinking about your own needs so much as you're like, I have to get this mission done. My soldiers or sailors or whoever's in the back, or the helicopters, whatever, have to get to where they're going, and my crew needs me to be at my best, and my best is going to be being very emotionally calm, ready for anything. You're kind of like a shortstop and an infielder, and then when something does pop up, then you're calm, and you just deal with it, and you walk through it. Temporal compression is a big deal here. So if you're lining up on final because some bozo decided to send a C-17 in the middle of the afternoon to Balad Air Base and in completely clear skies, that's a personal story. and then and then some small arms fire comes up at you. um, you just, in this particular instance I'm thinking about, it's just, well, I see that that's a problem. The co-pilot had never even seen that before. The co-pilot's like, hey, I think I got a strobe off of here. I go, that's not a strobe, actually. So he's seeing muzzle fire. And so then it's, I'll tell you what, I like this other runway over here better, and I'm going to go fly here, because I can't control anything else. What I can control is my hands, that airplane, and getting to that new runway. And because we're in a vulnerable state anyway. And then we get on the ground, take a good look at the airplane. We talk about it as a crew, and then we get on with the business at hand. And there have been times when I've been on the ground, dark, Mosul, Iraq. Hey, C-17 crew, do not move and make sure all your lights are out. Okay. Okay, we're code red at the base. And then not 50 feet, it seemed like 50 feet, maybe it's 300, maybe it's 400, I don't know. But I saw Apaches go by our cockpit window as explosion after explosion after explosion went off. And, thank you, Apaches. That was nice. You took care of some guys that might have meant ill for us. The only thing that bothered me during the course of the war, because it went on for so long, and we could talk later about whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. It was an awful thing in my view, because we didn't have a clear mind towards an exit. But for the ones I was commanding when I was a squadron commander of C-17s, I was looking at my young ones all the time going, I think you're getting too used to this, and I'm getting worried that you're getting complacent with this. I'm getting worried that you think that one of these events is just kind of a normal day in the park, and it's absolutely not that. And so I kept trying to make sure that they stayed up on their game and they weren't complacent.
Yeah. How much of this, General, is inherent, and how much of it is the result of training? Obviously, you're trained, to the highest level of skill, but how much of the ability to remain calm in those types of situations in the air is the result of your natural disposition, and how much of it is the result of the training that you receive?
Yeah, I'd say it's three tracks here. It's a good question. Yeah, so I'd call it a marble ice cream answer. One, you've got your training. That's very, very key and important. We get good training. Two, is your skills, your experience base, and and then the next part is you, what kind of person are you? And for me, like I said, I wanted to wear wings since the day I was nearly born. And I guess a great way to define me is I love things that go zoom. If it's got an engine, man, I want to be in it. And so that kind of attitude towards stuff is just been my makeup. That's the way I'm made. But as you grow up and older, then you start to take on leadership responsibilities. you try to impart the best that you have into your young ones. I remember very clear, and it's the teaching moments that are actually more prolific, and um, they're better in my memory banks, or sweeter memories than just something I did with an airplane. But I was I was the squadron commander of a combat deployed C-17 squadron. We were forward, and I had a brand new aircraft commander. He just got the keys to the aircraft as the guy in charge. He's a young captain, and he had a crew with him. And don't you know it? On his very first mission, they get shot at in Iraq, and they don't know if they've got a landing gear problem or not, or he had some damage to the airplane. They didn't, but so at Incirlik Air Base, Turkey, where they were recovering to, I went out. We put binoculars on them as they flew by. Everything looked pretty good, and he comes in and they land, perfect landing, everything is just great. And the crew comes in, they sit down with me, the commander, as I gather up the information about what happened down in Iraq when they were taken off. And I can see what's going on here. He's second guessing himself and all of this stuff, and he's a little bit rattled, and rightly so. It's his very first time, and he was in charge. And so I got the whole story. I released the crew except for him, and I said, okay, um, here's what's going to happen next. He said, I said, you don't want to fly tomorrow. He goes, no, sir, I really don't. And I said, right. But you know what? I need your air crew. I need your air crew to be right with you. So I said, this is how this is going to play out. You're going to go tell your air crew that you fought for a day off for the damn crew for tomorrow. And I tried to shove your butts right back into the airplane to make you get back up on the horse, but you weren't going to have it. And then I relented and finally gave you away, and I'm going to fly you in 3 days from now. How's that? And I said, you're going to go tell the crew that you were the man. And he goes, oh, I really need that. And I said, yeah. Go be the man with your crew. And then the young enlisted people later on, as they were walking past the desk, they were looking at me with eyes like, yeah, my captain showed you.
You know what? That is such leadership and such humility. I guarantee you that was a defining moment in the career of your squadron commander. There's no doubt
Yeah,
that was a defining moment because of the way that you handled that. Wow, that's
that was
very
fun.
powerful.
Sweet
Yeah,
memories.
yeah. Let me ask you, switch gears a little bit here, General, about the invasion of Venezuela, the
Hmm.
deposing of Maduro. Obviously, it's your position and the position of many that President Trump had clear authority under Article 2, Section 2, as the commander in chief to do what we did, to engage in that action.
Absolutely.
What do you say to critics? And I'm sure you've heard the criticisms that it constitutionally is questionable to unilaterally invade a country and take out a sovereign leader,
Sure.
and also could set a dangerous precedent going forward. And I'm thinking particularly about Washington's warning in his farewell address to avoid foreign entanglements. Not suggesting that that's what this is, but how do you respond to the criticisms along those lines of this action?
So first, we have to bust out the critics into two separate camps. There's one camp which doesn't deserve to be talked to at all because they're just noise. And that's the camp that is whatever flies out of Trump's mouth or whatever decision he makes, it could be that he discovered the cure for AIDS, and we're going to fight him on it tooth and nail. There's no way we're going to let you have that cure out there. So that camp are critics that don't deserve to be heard, in my view, at all. They're just noise. They don't contribute to anything. But then there's critics who raise very good questions like you're asking about the legality of stuff, precedents. What does this mean in the future? Is this going to be the wave of the future? Um, and I would say that as far as foreign entanglements went, boy, that horse left the barn a real long time ago. And you could go back to just Noriega and all the messy ways that it took us to go get Noriega. I had a lot of friends, mentors of mine, who flew the airdrops in that affair. It was really a nasty operation. But in this case, I think what a lot of people don't realize, first off, the president's on solid legal ground. Article 2, Section 2 gives him all the cover he needs. And they never turned off the war on drugs. So in your faces, have a nice day. But what people what people see in the retail news, this is what's unfortunate, and this is why we live in an age of deception and fifth generation warfare. What people see in the news is President Trump just willy-nilly went ahead and wrapped up Maduro, the lawfully elected president of this country, so we say. That's not what President Trump's doing. And he didn't even do regime change. Last I checked, Delcy Rodriguez is still there.
Yeah. Who was his second in command, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So what is President Trump doing? Well, he's started a war under the auspices of the war on drugs against the cartels. But while it's completely justified to protect the United States of America from the fentanyl trade, which is really just an extension of an opium war tactic that the Chinese are using against us. See how I'm getting global here real quick?
Mm-hmm.
It's not, you got to look away from the region. You have to look at, he's taken it to the cartels. What are the cartels? The cartels are the vascular system to everything that's illegal in this world, going all the way up to the city of London banksters and those whose names cannot be said, your Club of 300, your Rome guys, whatever you want to call them. It doesn't matter to me. The globalists of globalists that you never see on the news ever. They're the ones that profit from the money laundering, the private banking, the shadow banking, the human trafficking, the kid stuff, the organ harvesting, buying off politicians, co-opting our entire system, infiltrating all of our governments at local, state, and federal level. When you see a politician do something that's inherently against the citizens, that's when your eyebrows should go up. Well, President Trump, if you take all that illegality and you make it a big Jenga tower, that game Jenga, I love that game. And what if all the illegality is a Jenga tower, then what President Trump is in effect doing, he's yanking on that bottom brick with the war on the cartels. And how do we know we got their attention? Well, part of the benefactors of the cartels are the dirty sides of corrupt intelligence agencies. Well, one of the first actions, just for the USS Ford showing up in the neighborhood, you had MI6 out of the UK say, we're not going to share intel with you anymore. So ha ha ha. It's like, okay. And then you get all these politicians in the swamp in DC on both sides of the aisles. Well, president can't do this. He can't do that. He can't. It's like, why are you defending them? Oh, wait a minute. You probably have a deal. You probably have a deal. Or they got pictures of you doing something you shouldn't have been doing. So in other words, this is a much bigger deal than, oh, we roughed up Venezuela. Right now, you've got Petro and Scheinbaum and Rodriguez right in between a dog and a fire hydrant. On one side, they got the cartel bosses who are like, what are you doing? We paid you for something different. And then on the other side, you've got President Trump, who's like, I'm not going to put up with any of this nonsense. In fact, I'm going to start taking out mansions and yachts and boats and all kinds of other stuff. That's what Scott Bessent's doing with asset forfeiture.
Isn't he amazing? General Holt, I have to say, I knew I was going to like you because Matt recommended you. I did not know I was going to like you this much.
Okay.
You just totally blew my mind there. So thank you just for your frankness. It's so fresh. With respect to Trump making waves and pulling on the Jenga and the Jenga block and the global elites that nobody sees, President Trump made some pretty big waves in Davos at the World Economic Forum last week, especially with his comments around Greenland and stirring up discussion about Europe's ability to defend Greenland and other allies and even itself. You have intimate knowledge of the inner workings of NATO. What was your reaction to those discussions? And do you think NATO is still a relevant player in U.S. interest, if it ever was?
Okay, A+ on all these questions. So the first thing you do, step one, if you're a retired former military representative to NATO, is you go make popcorn and you get jalapenos out and you melt some cheese.
No beer though, General. No beer.
I've never followed that rule, so I don't know how that works. But so the next thing is, I watched President Trump bring in the 300. What a great message. He's bringing in 300 of his admin. Does 300 ring a bell? Oh, yeah, the Battle of Thermopylae with the Persians from the Spartans. Interesting. Anyway, he is poetic that way, so you can't just think he missed that. And then And then he goes in and does a full court takedown of all the globalists, and he kicks them right in the face, while on his left and his right, Greer, Lutnick, Besant, others are just smashing them. In fact, it was so good. It was so good. I wrote about this last week in my weekly column at newsmax.com. Howard Lutnick had a dinner thrown for him in his honor, with a panel that he was going to be on with Christine Lagarde, Rachel Reeves, the financialists in Europe. And it was, let's see, it was sponsored by BlackRock, and it was hosted by Larry Fink, the new chairman of the World Economic Forum. Well, Lutnick gets to speak at the end, and the first thing he says is, globalism has failed. We're not going to participate in this. This is over. This is a failed model, and we're done with this. Well, they go bananas. There's Rachel Reeves gives him some stern words, and then Christine Lagarde just gets up and walks out of the entire thing, the chairman of the ECB, and then the whole dinner gets shut down. They don't even serve dessert. So the thing you have to gauge is the emotionality of your opponent when they act out in ways that are uncivil like this, because these are all silver spoon creeps who never had a tough problem in their lives.
Well
When they're
said.
offended and they act out, well, now you know you're getting to them. And so now let's get to that last question. Is NATO viable? No. NATO lost its way when it went on this rampage in the Clinton era, right at the tail end of the H.W. Bush era of NATO expansion, even though he told Russia something else. And then eventually we go to 9/11, and now we're in full up. NATO is now an offensive weapon. It's no longer a defensive alliance in a region. And so I knew we had problems when I was at NATO between 2014, 2016. And the two threats we all talked about every single day was the Russians and the unchecked migration coming up through Italy. But it was the unchecked migration that was problem number one. I had Lindsey Graham show up into my office right before I retired, screaming and yelling at me because he wanted me to confirm that the Russians were the number one threat. And I just laughed at him. I just like, no, I'm not giving you any soundbite to take back to Congress. Sorry, no, we got a problem with Islamization here, and the Russians look like they're behaving themselves just fine. And so NATO, by going offensive, by Europe deadbeating on Americans even further, by having an alliance that's grown to the unwieldy point, it's not in our best interest, because NATO is a three-legged stool. It's values, it's security, and prosperity. And guess what? The Euros have kicked every one of those legs out from under the stool. That's not our problem. We didn't do it. They did it.
Yeah.
General, how retired are you? Can you say, is Lindsey Graham really Lady G?
First off, I'm retired. I don't hold a security clearance right now, which is a very good thing, because they'd come roll me up in 5 seconds. But especially if you watch me on Newsmax. But the he is the poster child of the neocons. And if there's something that I've watched our country go through, think of how many trillions of dollars, lives, broken lives, PTSD, lost limbs, for American adventurism.
Yeah.
I thought when I was a major, just becoming a lieutenant colonel in 2001, or 9/11 had happened. And then George Bush said, well, this is going to be a different kind of war. It's like, okay. I thought we would husband our resources. We would be very light, efficient, and lean, and stick these bad terrorists around the world where we could. And and then in the case of Afghanistan, I thought right after the Northern Alliance thing happened with our special ops, brilliant special operators, and we put the Taliban right back into a box, we'd call it a day and say we're done. That's not what happened. What we would learn later is this was just the beginning of an industry, and it became a sick industry. And and so what I learned throughout my career is that there has to be a very high bar to commit U.S. forces to combat. Right now, any combat you see of U.S. forces around the world is basically backfires to put a tourniquet on things that could, I mean, President Trump's running all over the world to try to put a fire blanket on World War III, which these financialists want, by the way, which they got in, the last century. They did 2 world wars over this stuff. What happens is They run out of money. Their debt cycle bursts. Their Ponzi schemes blow apart. They got to have a fall guy, so they create one. And in this case, they wanted Putin to be the fall guy. So how dare you, President Trump, for wanting to end this war? If we don't end this war, then we're going to have to answer to the European people. And you see him putting this out all over the world. It doesn't always go so cleanly. He doesn't, reasonable people can argue with his strategy sometimes. But I'd rather be here than Comrade Kamala Harris just signing over the United States to the globalists and us looking at where we can go get our CBDC and our digital IDs.
No kidding. One other question for you that just kind of popped into mind while you were talking about NATO. When I worked for Pfizer, we hosted, or I think we didn't host, we were sponsors of some event for the UN Foundation.
Right.
And they were honoring that particular evening UN peacekeepers, and they brought in UN peacekeepers and they trotted them out in front of all of us while we, ate whatever fancy dinner. And I just remember vividly thinking, these are not soldiers. These people are in no way combat ready.
Right.
They're in no way ready to even be outside of the buffet line.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on the UN Security Council or the UN security or peacekeeping forces?
Yeah, UN peacekeepers is an oxymoron. The UN has never stopped one conflict, never kept one peace. The blue helmet brigades of the willing, and now third world nations, like where I was serving in Kyrgyzstan, they send a lot of folks to be peacekeepers because it's a cheap form of military training for their people. They can't afford military training in their own country, so they get something out of doing some of these missions. But the corruption and the grift is what you're really looking at. You're looking at a profit center. You're looking at a very sick profit center that capitalizes on human misery. And then if you add that to our NGOs, USAID grift pot, now you've got broken intelligence agencies and deep states that marry up with that. They perform color revolutions around the world. They turn a spade on anybody who doesn't agree with them. And we bust through the sovereignty of nations. And so, now let's get back to the question of what Washington said about foreign entanglements. We get to the place where average Americans, if they understood a lot of this stuff and did the research, and I don't mean classified knowledge like I have, I mean, if you really got under available knowledge, you'd be ashamed. You'd say, I can't believe we do that in our country's name. And what's this UN thing or this WHO thing? And why are we even contributing to that? This is an evil thing. And this is what's beautiful about Davos, because the president came out with the Board of Peace. He said, we don't need a UN. We got this. Why is that important? Well, a lot of people are like, oh, he put Putin on there. He's got Tony Blair. That guy's a globalist. We got Xi Jinping. We don't even know what bunker he's in right now. And then why would we do that? Well, the reason we do that is because you can like it or you can not like it, but there is power on this globe. So do you want to flatten out the power structure and say this Board of Peace is where rivals are going to meet and work out the toughest issues on the planet, not the climate change garbage? And we're not going to do it with legions and legions of bureaucrats and technocrats and payoffs through NGOs and all this other fat, which basically crushes liberty and crushes our tax dollars.
Yeah.
And so what the president said is, I can't stand Tony Blair. Fine. He's on the board. Why? Because if we don't put him on the board, he's just going to act up anyway under his writ as the senior manager for the city of London.
Yeah. So, General, President Trump really is at war with the military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned us against.
He is, but the military-industrial complex, when it was young and cute in the 50s, has really spawned. It's like mushrooms. It's spawned spores. So now we have an education industrial complex. We have a State Department industrial complex. We have a Board of Labor industrial complex. We have unions industrial complex. On and on and on and on. What he's attempting to do, and this is, again, Americans who are now questioning, why am I even paying income taxes? Will keep questioning that, because there is no reason for you to be paying income taxes, especially if Clown Boy at the Fed is just going to keep printing their way out of their problems and making your money in your 401k worthless, which is what we're about to go through. The next stop is here comes the financial storm. Okay, but I do think that President Trump has got his sights on the global order as defined going back to 1688 when the Venetians took over Europe and went into take over the British crown. When those things occurred, then you had the Dutch trading company, and then it would become the British East India Trading Company, and that's what would become your magnates of today and the little weasels who think that they earned their way into these roles.
Yeah. General, there are people who look at the scene and they know President Trump's stated position: America first, avoid unnecessary foreign entanglements. It's not our responsibility to invoke our military might in every conflict in the world. And then they see the action in Venezuela. Could you reconcile those two things? What is the strategic American interest beyond the narco-terrorist issue on which it was justified largely, the drug trafficking and all of that? But what is the larger geopolitical interest that America has in the action that we took?
With our interventionism around the world and our focus well beyond our hemisphere, we have not minded our hemisphere, and we have allowed threats to gather here. So the trouble is, there is President Monroe was brilliant. He understood that our hemisphere had to be guarded because, yes, we have a big ocean on the left and the right of us, but we also have land masses to the north and south. Guess what? Today's race is about roots and resources, and we have watched this hemisphere get riddled with Iranian operatives, Iranian naval ships, Russian naval ships, Chinese naval ships. Even the North Koreans send fishing vessels down here. What President Trump is reestablishing is the tenets of the Monroe Doctrine, and so he's pushing these influences and making it a very inhospitable hemisphere for them to operate in. He's creating cost impositions, and very little of it's military, by the way. So the problem is, things have gotten so bad and so in arrears. There's really no way the president can get after this through just tough bullet-nosed negotiation and diplomacy. And then Americans who think that Venezuela or things like Greenland or Canada are not important to our security are just kidding themselves. They're just naive. I just would say, you haven't read enough. You need to go read some more. But what I do appreciate is, you remember in the days that led up to the snatching of Maduro, which, by the way, was a military orchestration of beautiful. I used to be the mission commander of the C-17 units that would haul those units, and they just performed flawlessly. But in the lead up to that, everybody thought, we're going to drop paratroopers all over the place. We're going to invade. We're going to bomb everything in sight. And that's what they said. And that's what they're saying we're going to do about Iran. And guess what the reality is? The reality is the president really loves showing up with the big stick, having you get freaked out. You call all your buddies. We scoop up all that intelligence through our really cool intel gathering systems, leave it there. And then we go roll them up, or we go investigate them. We go take their assets. So as much as the president can do this in an elegant way without committing thousands of troops to combat, he has maneuvered that quite well, I would say.
Do you believe that that our plan for the aftermath? I mean, we've seen, General, you've seen countries fall into anarchy after we've engaged in regime change or have gone in and altered the political structure of their countries. Are you confident that the plan in place now for the aftermath of this will keep the country stable and actually improve Venezuela? or do we or is there a concern that this could fall into the sort of anarchy that we've seen in other places?
Yep, I don't think so. And President Trump actually addressed this exact question. He related that he had learned this lesson through his observations of the Iraq War when bozo face Wolfowitz and Bremer went in and fired all the Ba'ath Party and decided to make the country as dysfunctional as it could possibly be. So, and then we fly billions of dollars in cash in there. I flew one of those missions, and nobody knows where that stuff is now, and the country's still a basket case. Well, what are we doing here? It's not regime change. Delcy Rodriguez, as communist as she is, she's still in control. The army is still very much in control. We have told them we would really like it if you let go more of those political prisoners and started thinking about elections coming up soon. And if you don't, maybe you'll get another visit from us. That's enough. But it's functioning the way it was in its previous dysfunctionality. But what has happened is President Trump has very cleverly planted the seeds of liberty that are growing and germinating in Venezuela as we speak. But the big deal is it's your country. If you want it, take it back. Now, when they're performing well, and I know this from business, there are a lot of business dollars now starting to flow right back into Venezuela because they want to open up the oil fields and want to get back to business and get things going. And you know what? Nothing will turn a communist into a capitalist more than seeing the ship get righted and Caracas getting back to the beautiful little place it was when I was there on the day that Hugo Chavez got elected in 1998.
Chris, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say that's an interesting point that I'd never thought about. Because people criticize President Trump for saying, well, you went and you took out Maduro, but you have his second in command essentially leading the country, and not that much has changed. But your point, General, is that the very reason why she is in power is that, again, we are planting a seed of liberty. We're not going in and trying to change everything in one fell swoop, which essentially is what we did in Iraq.
That's exactly right. You break it, you own it. And we learned that in Afghanistan. I mean, what did we accomplish for $1 trillion in Afghanistan with all the deaths? We got the Taliban out of the 10th century into the 11th. I mean, that's what we paid for. And I remember asking my boss, General Petraeus, when I was the base commander in Kyrgyzstan. We just had a moment, and I wasn't antagonizing him or anything. He was already trying to swallow down some of my very unconventional methods in Kyrgyzstan. But I just said, sir, how does this end? When is this going to end? And what do we call victory? And we couldn't get there. We just could not get there because, first off, if you're wearing a uniform, it's not your war. We go where we're told. That's called a chain of command. But and you try to keep putting solutions in front of the leadership, the civilian leadership, that makes sense for conflict cessation to get out. But look at all of the grift from the NGOs that went in there to go make money, nothing else. I was at a Council on Foreign Relations meeting with a prominent NGO, and they were bragging in the meeting that they were able to get 10% of every dollar they got from the government and from donors onto the streets of Kabul. And they called that a success. And I said, whoa. So 90% doesn't touch Afghanistan. You're bragging about 10%. And they're like, yeah, no, those are good numbers. And I go, okay. Gosh. Says who? So I guess this is a very different approach. This is not nation building. This is how about a little helping hand? So now let's look at Iran. Everybody's thinking, oh my gosh, 2 carrier strike groups. We've got airplanes out the wazoo. We've got molecular vaporizers and laser beams aimed at, and so what needs to happen, and what I would advise the president, what I think he's going to do is, we may hit a besieged headquarters. We may go hit an IRGC headquarters. What we want to do is keep the revolution organic, keep control in the hands of the Iranian people, and let them go get their own country back. If you need a little help from us, and you need, the religious police station down the street taken out, listen, we're really good at that, and we'll just eliminate that for you. And you guys, but what we don't need to do is pick their leader for them, We need to let them self-govern and self-determine. Let their own Thomas Jeffersons and Paul Revere's and Sam Adams come to the forefront. And then respect that and welcome them into the world community and see where they fit. The Iranians, as a people, are great friends of the United States, wonderful friends of the United States. And they're very intelligent, very well educated, and they're under the thumb of a police state. Well, the time of the thugs may have come and gone. So do we have to do what we did in Iraq? No. But I guarantee you there are voices in the president's ear right now saying that's exactly what you need to do, Lindsey Graham, Lindsey Graham. And we don't need to do that. What we need to do is just be a good friend and help put things to their advantage. Let them deal with it.
In general, do you think, I mean, that touches on something that's of great interest to me. You've mentioned about the NGOs, the fracturing of our intelligence community, deep state, and the color revolutions that have been perpetrated on nations by these rogue elements of the US government. Are we going to see any kind of reconciling of that? I mean, to me, if I look at Iran, if I look at Venezuela.
So you're getting on to probably the most important question of the day. And I explained what I thought the president's real war was. It wasn't about Venezuela. This is about the city of London being propped up by these cartels and its vascular system. And so those tentacles run right through your question. And that question is ability. We haven't seen any, not much to speak of. We all thought there would be some. So one of two things is true. And I pray that the truth lies in that the president has a very big plan. And that big plan involves very dramatic moves to go ahead and identify the thousands of guilty traitors in our country, seditious and guilty traitors that need to be dealt with and rolled up. And it would probably have to be in a tribunal type style. We're this close to the midterms. I don't see any other way out of it. It's certainly not going to come through the normal court systems. It's not going to come through the feckless DOJ that we have right now. And maybe it's feckless on purpose. Maybe it's part of a bigger plan. I don't know. It doesn't stop me from voicing my First Amendment opinion as an American on social about the disgust I feel that we haven't had that accountability yet. However, if we don't have that age of accountability, well, then we're in trouble, because you have right now, and I mean, we see very clear evidence that there is no aisle in DC. They're all unified against Trump. The Republicans are fighting Trump tooth and nail on every single thing they possibly can. They won't codify any of his executive actions. They won't confirm his appointees. They won't pass the major parts of his bills. And so what happens?
Oh, you may have lost the general for a second.
Get business as usual and all the corruption and all the graft. And so if what I could see happening is if they're not checked, the Republicans are going to willingly hand over power to the Senate, in the Senate and the Congress, to the Democrats. The Democrats will then impeach Trump, and we will be in a real bad place a year and a half from now. And so those are my cautions. However, take heart. Everybody I get to talk to is like, just hold on. Things are percolating behind the scenes, and good things can happen. I'm not a Q or a trust the plan guy, but I am a very keen observer. The president, I do, whether they like it or not, I provide the team feedback as a strategist. And I do recall, I did have the fortune to have dinner one night at Mar-a-Lago with the president. And I got to meet him, and we talked about all things NATO at the time. It was meant a few years ago. And I laughed about his first NATO summit in his life, and as a NATO guy, how he broke every protocol, and I just thought it was marvelous. And he asked me at the end. He said, "Hey Blaine, do you know how many people knew that would be my strategy in Brussels?" And I said, "No, sir. How many?" He said, "Just me. I'm the only one who knew."
Wow.
And looking back at all of it, I believe him. I absolutely believe him.
Well, he must have been familiar with Sir Frederick the Great, who said, if I thought my overcoat knew what my plans are, I would take it off and burn it. So that's such a great point. So General, President Trump is aware of the exigencies and of sort of the perilous midterms that are approaching. And from what we can get on the ground from our listeners and from the people who support us and others, the position is that the president has got to move on these high level traders that you're talking about here.
Yeah.
And there is enormous frustration in the base that has not yet occurred. You're suggesting that is not going to happen under our current DOJ, and it may have to be military tribunals. Do you think that it is going to happen?
You're getting into the area where I have hope and optimism, and I pray. But do I have the ability to have tractable evidence to say I think this is going to happen? I don't. I can only observe what I can observe, and then if you look at just some of the interplay on social media between President Trump and what he said about his conversation with Tim Waltz or Mayor Frey and how it was conciliatory. What I have warned them about is even if you have a 9D chess strategy that's perfected in AI modeling and Sun Tzu approved it from heaven, you better understand the realities of a political base. And right now, your political base is getting torn up hard.
Yeah.
Because first off, we worship God. We don't worship a human being on this planet. And our Savior is in heaven. With that said, what people do is they can only react to what they can observe. And so when I hear some of the so-called Trump insiders on podcasts or whatever admonish people that they're not having faith or trusting the plan, it's like, hey, this is my country. Those are my kids. This is my generation. Yeah. And if this guy's got it wrong, I got a real problem with that. So
yeah.
You got to be sympathetic towards the base. You can't go. It's like the day that President Trump, big misstep, communications wise, when he said, "Oh, the Epstein thing is a hoax." And it's like, no, that involves kids. We have enough evidence in front of our faces to know better. And we're Americans and we have American values. And no, we're not letting that go. Or the Charlie Kirk nonsense. Oh, Charlie died this way. Sorry, I've shot a Mauser 30-06. Didn't happen that way. So tell us why you're lying.
Yeah.
In other words, I know there's stuff going on behind the scenes. I absolutely know that for a fact. But what I am saying is they would do well to be mindful about their optics and their communications at a time when they need the base. They don't want to alienate themselves with anybody who calls himself friend. And again, I pray for our president and his team to be nothing but successful. And all of my criticisms at a strategic level, I so want to be wrong. I so want to wake up one morning and go, well, what a doofus I was. Well, I only have the variables I have to work with. But I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, and that's what we should be doing. I do understand there's other things happening behind the scenes, but I will tell you that we've got 90 days, in my view. We've got to do something very big in 90 days. And if we don't, we're going to get in tight on political season, and we're going to find we've got problems.
Yeah. And we're looking at, President Trump going through another round of impeachment hoaxes. If the Democrats take control of the Congress, it's going to be a massive ordeal. That's why this is.
Oh, no, they'll get it done this time. They'll get it done this time. And if you think that life as an American under the Biden years was rough, they'll triple the punishment this time. So in other words, it's like when I was flying heavy aircraft, and had a young co-pilot, and we have a big emergency and firelight or whatever, and you see that the co-pilot's a little jumpy. I remember I would always look over at the co-pilot and go, you know what? The cool part is we've got the rest of our lives to figure this out.
We do. We have the rest of our lives to figure it out. And then we have an eternity to think about what we may have done or should have done.
Well, I will also say that the reason that every American should fight like hell for their nation and care and do the research and provide the commentary and the critique is I don't want to be a member of the generation that failed our founders. Yeah. And I don't want to be a member of the generation that failed our kids and our grandkids. because they deserve so much better than what we had. And that's what we fight for, and that's righteous. And honestly, from a God perspective, what happens if you eliminate the United States?
Right.
Look at the world. It's a rough world. Nothing good happens in this world if the United States, that can't get out of its own way sometimes, isn't around. Churchill said it really well. You can always trust the United States to do the right thing after they've tried everything else.
Yes,
And I think we're just about to get there.
Yeah. I have a son, General. One of our sons is 18, and he's been wanting to go into the Marine Corps. He knows that, my dad, his grandfather was a U.S. Marine. And
Semper Fi. Does he like crayons?
I'll tell him that you asked, and I'll get back to you. But we have sort of an internal conflict in our family. Me and my wife, as his mother, and it's something that we're working through. And her concern, obviously, I support him joining the U.S. Marine Corps. I think it would be a powerful experience for him. Her concern is that she doesn't want him to end up in some foreign country fighting some war that does not serve American interests and ends up being a disaster for the country and for him. My position is that President Trump does have an acute appreciation of precisely that and is determined to keep our country out of unnecessary wars and can affect the type of changes that we want to see through the type of actions that we saw in Venezuela, which I don't believe cost the lives of any American servicemen or women.
Nope.
So
Yep.
what would you say if you were talking to my family or to my son on this issue?
Well, I'm a good one to talk about it because I come from the generation that fought decades of endless, stupid, go nowhere wars. But what I would say is this: in the span of my military career, would I go do it again, even at that point in time? And I can tell you that I absolutely would go do it again because uh, It's a great part of the American story that our military is such, with its upward mobility possibilities, that you could come in as a private first class and exit as a four-star general with a doctorate degree. That you can change an entire generation of circumstances in your bigger family. um, and the learning. So I start out as a kid whose principals in school knew him much better than his teachers, and I was a hot mess. Now I would later on then find out that's what we call management material. But the thing that we do is we hone and craft our young ones. And now that we're wringing DEI, thank God, wokeness and all that other crap out, um, we we are the nation's vanguard and backbone, and we believe in the Constitution, and we have that DNA that goes right on back to Sam Adams birthing America in a bar. That's our attitude, and what you may send in a young man to Paris Island for that basic training, what you get back is something that's indescribable. We do such a great job with molding our young men and women in this way, and they have such an opportunity out in front of them. Some of these stories don't end up well, as you well know, and we've got a lot of work to do for our vets. But it's by and large my opinion that even after what I've been through and my compatriots have been through, the service to the nation and to be there for your nation and to accrue what you will get more than you will ever give.
Hmm.
Wow. Wow,
That's incredible.
that's very powerful. Speaking of the veterans, General, this jogged me when you were talking. We've had several guests on our show, Darren Selnick and others,
Mhm.
who are working with the administration and Congress to try to improve the lot of our veterans and the Veterans Affairs. I know you're not an expert on this, but you are a decorated veteran. Could you comment a bit on the abysmal treatment that so many of our veterans receive, and what would you advocate to change that system? Some of the things we heard with our guest were absolutely horrible. Like some of these administrators in the VA are directly at odds and hostile to the needs of some of these decorated veterans.
If you're graded in an organization by how many benefits you deny a veteran, um, not only are you a sick and reprehensible part of our society, but you have no business being near our veterans. Uh,
Hmm.
Look, Doug Collins is a great guy. He's sitting up on top of a hot mess, and there are pocketed places of excellence. I'm here in northern Idaho. Our VA does very well here. I'm hearing good things about a couple of other spots around the country, but by and large, if you have an organization where the vet is supposed to clap and cry with gratitude just because you got them the pills that they needed, or the therapy, the physical therapy that they needed, and they're supposed to just fawn over you like you're some sort of deity, something is completely broken in that system.
Yeah.
Where you have to show fealty to your shadowy overlords after you're the one that went and laid it on the line and kicked in the doors for the country.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
the in my estimation, if the president asked me, how do you fix something like that? Well, what I would say is, sir, what we're going to do is blow it up. We're going to blow it up. What we're going to do is find a different way to take care of our vets, and we're going to have a different system in place. And what we're also going to do is we're going to spend lavishly here, because you spend trillions of dollars on the latest molecular vaporizer, and Golden Dome and all that other crap, and we're it only takes 30 days to send America's military into any direction in the planet and go conquer it. But then after you've sent us to war, it takes decades for us to go get a VA rating and the right therapy that we need.
Yeah.
And that's incorrect. And it's incorrect that we have vets with needs and they're homeless. It's incorrect. It's appalling to me that somebody would come up to me and say, well, you guys get that golden healthcare plan. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Um, Congress has a better deal. Congress gets retired after just being reelected one time. So this is just indicative to me that we've got our national values wrong, misprioritized, and we need to reconsider what service to the nation. When you are in a role in our government where you have an unlimited liability clause in your contract, meaning you could take a bullet for your country and that's part of the job. Nobody else has that. The first responders have that, and we have that, and so it ought to be a different deal. But what I saw a pundit the other day on TV, and it made my eyeballs fall out of my brain. He was like, well, we've got these vets whining about needing more from the VA. What more could we do? And it's like, let's go. How about you just give us all the money that was stolen out of Minnesota? Just give us
Yeah.
that. And as vets, we'll work with it. And then let vets run the damn VA.
Yeah.
Because the veteran services organizations where vets create their own nonprofits and do stuff for the vets, they're doing more for the vets than the government is.
General, we had someone on our show. Uh, we've had a couple of people on our show, one of whom, both of whom are vets, decorated combat veterans.
Mhm.
One of them started a very successful nonprofit because he saw what was going on in the VA. He
Right.
saw the absolute dysfunction of that agency.
Jeremy
he had
Harrell.
Jeremy Harrell.
Okay.
And he had friends who were suffering horribly because of it. So he started his own nonprofit, became very successful, served countless veterans through his nonprofit by getting them the care that they needed. And you know
Yep.
what the VA did? Instead of applauding him and perhaps
Mhm.
modeling their own practices after
Cease and
him,
desist order.
cease and
Worse.
desist order,
Mhm.
administrative investigation, which led
Yeah.
to a felony prosecution
Yep.
and a conviction under the Biden administration.
Yeah.
That incenses me beyond, as Danielle would say, that inflames me with the fire of 1,000 suns or something
Okay.
like that. because
Let's
it
put a pin in
absolutely
that.
does.
Let's put a pin in that really quick. If these communists get back into power, my friend, it'll be that times 5.
Yeah.
It'll be that times 5. If we ever let these people get back, if we don't prosecute them for that, I mean, I can think of no better example. Well, perhaps your example is a better one, but look at Tina Peters.
Yeah.
Look at Tina Peters.
Exactly.
This is an American patriot, and all she did was state the obvious, that there were irregularities and something was wrong. And the woman who's walking free, Jenna Griswold, doesn't give a damn about Tina
Right.
Peters, and she's still walking free. So something's got to change, and we've only got 90 days to do it. Like I said, we've got the rest of our lives to figure this out.
What do you do right now, General? Right now, if you're calling the shots, what do you do right now to get Tina Peters out of prison?
You basically, I would start with the abuse that she just incurred, that they are no longer. Um, you could probably start with a case that they are not competent or certified to take care of her or to hold her because they cannot guarantee her safety, and then have her remanded to a federal holding facility, something like the club at Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. And then once that's done, then the president should just pardon her and get her and get her over it. But what I see is a DOJ that is feckless, does not match up with the presidential priorities, and in this particular case, look, if we lose Tina Peters out of this, you're going to see that base just get white hot.
It is a massively important issue. And President Trump, of course, General, has done and said everything he can possibly do, but he's just one man. And I do believe that there is frustration on his part that the DOJ is not moving aggressively enough on these issues and other issues in terms of indictments and prosecutions. I truly believe that. But do you believe at some point some of these people are going to have to be fired?
Just fired. Firing's not really enough. It's
I'm talking about Bondi.
I'm talking about Bondi too.
Oh, wow.
If you act in a way that is inconsistent with your oath to the Constitution and the president nominating and getting you confirmed as our AG, well, then I want to know why. So I want to know what your motivations are for doing nothing, because you sure have an interesting rap sheet. She was a general counsel to Pfizer with her friend Susie Wiles. She is a Bush family acolyte. So I want to know why she's phoning it in from Tampa. And if she can't answer those questions well, or there's evidence to suggest that she's got other influences in her life, which are illegal influences, well, then prosecute her. But where I'm at is this is at a minimum dereliction of duty. At a minimum. What about the thing on Fox News the 2 nights ago where she said, "I can tell you, I have written a strongly worded letter to Tim Walz." Have we lost our minds? So again, it gets back to when you see somebody who should be acting in a certain way, but they're acting in a completely bizarre, different way. Don't say they're crazy and that they're incompetent. Don't say that at all. Your first inclination should be, who's paying for you?
Yeah. What do you think is going on with Kash Patel? I saw yesterday that he said that they have started investigating and maybe wrapping up some people who are behind the instigation of what's going on in Minnesota, the funders perhaps. And, you pointed out what they told us about Charlie Kirk, which seems so implausible. And similarly, he's come out and said that the Epstein files are a nothing burger.
Right.
Do you think he is behaving on the level, and he's just not getting the DOJ prosecutorial backup that he needs, or is he a question mark for you too?
Well, let me give you another fun fact about the FBI. So you have the ICE folks that are at great personal risk to themselves and their families enforcing the law in Minnesota. And they're basically fighting a paid army from an NGO. So here's what I don't see. I don't see federal law enforcement wearing blue FBI jackets on the streets with them. I don't see that anywhere. I also don't see that the FBI has opened up investigations into any of these NGOs that are funding these little creeps. And so the point is, I'm so hopeful when we found out Kash was going to be the FBI director, and unless I'm shockingly surprised later on, he's extremely disappointing. And then again, I get more to the, well, what are your motivations? Why is it this way? We need to go find out these things. And if you're unable to serve, then resign. Just resign. If you're unable to serve, then please resign. Same thing with Pam. And again, I think it's an ideal time this close into the midterms for the president to person by person, name by name, review all of the people in his cabinet and their deputy positions, and then find out what's their score, what's their scorecard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and sort it out that way. It has to be done, and it's not people develop favorites on the admin, or they loved certain people before the administration took its seats. This is not about whether you like or don't like somebody. It's not about like. This is a war,
Yeah.
and it's for our country. And if you're unable to do the job for whatever reason, you should not be in the job. And then if you've got designs on our country because you're either compromised or blackmailed or extorted or you're bribed, well, then we need to investigate you and put you away.
Yeah.
Yeah. General, I have thought for some time now that if she and others are not fired and fired quickly and replaced, and there are not serious indictments of these top level officials who are responsible for desecrating the rule of law for 4 years, 8 years, then we are going to get wiped out in the midterms, and we'll have only ourselves to blame. And you're right. Time is of the essence. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, we're really in the ninth inning,
Hmm.
which makes the game very exciting. But the but
I
but
hope we get
what we
overtime.
yeah, but
We
what we
still
have to
have
do.
hope. I still believe that there are things we
I
can
do
do
too.
and
I
should
do
do,
too.
and I continue
But I
to
would.
believe that President Trump is enormously frustrated by the lack
He is.
of
He is.
movement,
You
and
can
he'll do
tell.
what's
You can tell he
necessary.
is.
Yeah, because he
He.
understands that not only for the good of the country, but really so he can avoid the kind of personal suffering that he will go through if they take
Yeah.
control.
Yeah. Listen, they're going to come at us if we lose here. They're going to come at us, and um,
And you said you think
that.
they'll be successful this time, General.
Yeah, I mean, they'll look at their failures of the Biden years, and then they'll go, okay, we went too light. Um, and we're going to make life exceedingly difficult. So if you didn't like that the FBI could swat soccer moms who were defending their kids at a school board meeting, oh, listen, that's just light stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is if you're an American who's not taking an interest, you're apathetic. This isn't politics as usual. This isn't red versus blue. This is not Democrat versus Republican. This is we the people versus they the swamp, and they the swamp are funded by the British Empire, the City of London, and that's where the deep state comes from. And they've got every single type of resource, money, and all of this because you know what? They're fighting for their necks. They know if they lose here, that it's the accountability piece, and there will be a new world order because we will be departing the old financial system. So I can't stress enough, this one is for all the marbles. And so if you're an American and you're like, holy cow, what do I got to do? Well, start by melting the switchboard to your stupid elected official. And unless Tim Burchett's your congressman or John Kennedy's your senator, you got a stupid elected official. So now go educate them and get active because you're fighting for your kids and your grandkids. And it's important.
Yeah. And President Trump knows this, General, and
He does.
he has the heart for this.
He does. He's up for it. I can tell you. I think of all the things the man has gone through. And that's what also gives me heart and hope. He didn't go through everything he's gone through, the assassination attempts, the bankruptcy stuff where they tried to bankrupt him, the lawfare, the impeachments, all of the stuff, terror against his family members. He didn't go through all of this to get to this place and fail. And I could tell you from sitting down with him for a little bit, that's a smart man. He's also got a great sense of humor, by the way, in person. But he is a very smart man, and I think he can see things for what they are. I just, as an agitated, worried, concerned American, it's like we, the people, are in the passenger seat, and we're backseat drivers going, watch out for the stop sign. No, there's a parking light over there. You're going too fast. That's kind of who we are because we all have a ticket on this bus.
Yeah. Well, I hope that your pipeline to the administration stays clean and open, and that they are listening to President Trump is listening to what you're saying here because you are 100% correct. And Danielle, do you have any final thoughts for the General today?
No, just I appreciate you so much, and I hope that you'll be coming back with us soon. This was such a joy and just a privilege to be able to have this conversation with you today, General.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's a pleasure to talk this stuff through with you. And I will remain the president's team's ankle biter.
There you go. Well, thank you for your service to the country, and thank you particularly for the advice about my son in the Marine Corps because it's
Absolutely.
extraordinarily valuable to us.
God bless. And listen, the crayons, you don't eat those. You just
I'll remind him of that too.
to be fair, I'm going out for an adult beverage tomorrow night with my dear friend who's a retired Marine colonel. And
Okay.
our jokes are not like
used
other
to
people's
say, my
jokes.
dad used to say, General, my dad used to say that, you know what, we can rib each other and we go after each other, but when it comes down to confronting a real enemy,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
no potent, more unified force in the
Yep.
world than the
Not an
United
ounce of
States
daylight.
military.
Not
Yep.
an ounce of daylight. You betcha.
God
Awesome.
bless you, sir, and thank you
God
again.
bless. Thank you.
God bless you, General. We'll be talking to you soon. Chris, I love what he said about don't tell me I'm not seeing what I'm seeing. You know, there's so many commentators that we look at, whether it's on X or any of the podcasts that are saying, you know, trust the plan. And like you talked about, 5D chess, 9D chess, 17D chess. It doesn't matter. If we're not seeing the results we expect to see, we have a right and an obligation to talk about it.
Yeah. So basically, the general is criticizing the people who are ostensibly on our team, criticizing them for criticizing and characterizing people like us and millions of others as the black pillars,
Right.
simply because we're very concerned about the lack of action. And I love the general's perspective on that. We are
Yeah.
the base. We have every obligation and every right to criticize the administration when it's not doing what it said it was going to do. Not only is it not doing it, it seems to have the reverse trajectory. It seems to be, in so many ways, in with the very enemies and the very deep state that we're trying to dismantle. And that
Yeah.
is what is demoralizing about all of this. And people have a right to be concerned. And he's right, Danielle, that if we don't get this right in a very short period of time, the midterm elections are going to be a very, very long night for Republicans.
Yeah. And Chris, it's not just that we need justice before the midterms. We have to fix our elections before the midterms. We can't have one and not the other because then the same trash, the same brand of trash is going to end up right back in office.
Yeah. And we didn't get a chance to ask the general about that specifically, whether that was a component or a motivating factor for the action in Venezuela, but we have talked about it with other guests. And you're exactly right. It is my hope and prayer, two things, that there are terminations in the DOJ, that there are serious indictments of high level traitors, and that there is election reform for these digital voting systems between now and the midterms. And there's real action taken on that. Because you're right, Danielle, you've always said the most important single issue in the country is the security of our election system.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And, you know, through starting in 2020 and probably before that, we've been gaslit by people for speaking the truth, speaking the obvious truth. I am ready for the end of these gaslighting days where we're the ones over here saying the emperor has no clothes on, the emperor has no clothes on. Chris, do you think that people have woken up? Do you think enough people have woken up? I'm not convinced that people are awake. If you just talk to people in run-of-the-mill life, I'm not sure that enough people are awake, but it's going to be a bumpy awakening for them if they don't come to before I don't know what's going to happen. Can you imagine arrests start happening and then that's their awakening?
Yes, I mean it's going to be extraordinary, and I just hope that by the time many of these people wake up, it's not too late for them to take action. I'm reminded of a story my dad used to tell me, Danielle, about the Nuremberg trials. Robert Jackson, who was a U.S. Supreme Court justice, was the chief prosecutor in Nuremberg. He prosecuted all of the worst Nazi war criminals in in Hitler's regime, and one of them, I can't remember the name, but one of the generals said to Jackson, during one of the breaks in the trial, he was talking with him, and he said, "How could you?" Jackson said, "How could y'all possibly do this? How could you disintegrate to this level of barbarism?" And the general said, "Honestly, I never thought that it would get to this point. I never thought that it would get to this point. And Jackson looked back at him and said, you know what, General? It got to this point the moment you turned your back when the first innocent life was compromised.
Mm.
That's when it got to this point. And from there, it was only a matter of time and degree. And that's what we have to remember and keep in mind. We're fighting against the precipitous decline of our freedom, and we cannot let it come to a point where it's too late to recover. We can't. People have to become engaged, Danielle, and we have to do it now.
Can you imagine waking up whenever there's some kind of impactful situation that takes place, whatever precipitating event is coming, and you say, "Holy smokes, I slept through the first 6 years of this war."
Exactly. Exactly. And you know what, Danielle? And they've put so many people in a position. It's really a deep state psychological ploy that is, it's not new. It's centuries old,
Yeah.
but they put people in a position where someone can say, I'll just take one issue, the transgender issue. Every human being instinctively knows that a male cannot biologically, physiologically, psychologically become a female, and a female cannot become a male. It is glaringly obvious, it is axiomatic. Yet these freaks and these people who are pushing this have individuals believing that they can't even, they're second guessing what they observe and know instinctively. And they're the ones who are engaged in you know, wrong thinking. They're the ones who are perpetrating the lies when it's clearly the opposite. So they have people to a point now where they're second guess their most basic convictions and their
Yeah.
most basic beliefs to the point where they're silent about it. I mean, it really is an extraordinary work of propaganda that has been done on so many Americans. We're to the point now where they second guess their own core instinctive convictions about things.
It's true. And the propaganda, I was talking with my mom about this last night. In Minnesota, you think about all these people who are going to fight ICE. Now, you're going to disrupt people who are trying to bring order to your disrupted community, who are trying to extract criminals, ruthless criminals who rape children, who do unspeakable things, who have murdered people, who steal things, and who, not on top of the fact that many of them have stolen hundreds of thousands or taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from US taxpayers fraudulently. So you're going that there, the propaganda is so insane that there are people who are very clearly fighting the people who are there to save them. And I know J.J. Carroll talked about that. It's just unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. I'm like, what planet are you living on? But they have been indoctrinated. And I have friends who live in big cities that are fully indoctrinated into this belief. And I just can't fathom it. I have one friend who said that her son was fighting ICE in Minnesota, and she couldn't be more proud. I mean, I haven't talked to her in a long time, to be honest with you, but I saw it on Facebook, and I'm just completely stunned, Chris. I can't imagine how it's not so obvious.
It really is. You're so right. They are attacking and doing everything they can to destroy the very fabric that is protecting them. And they believe that it's an edifice, I guess, that can never crumble, or maybe they want the whole edifice to crumble, and they don't understand the consequences for them personally if it does. I don't understand that way of thinking at all. Daniel, I saw something yesterday. It was humorous, but it was also very revealing. There was a clip where these young people were dressed up in Obama in Biden Harris T-shirts, and they were acting as though, and they had these foreigners with them who were in fact American citizens, but they were pretending that they weren't, and they were going up to these liberals at their homes, ones who were criticizing President Trump for closing the border, and they want the border open, and they want everybody to be able to come in. And they had 10 or 12 or 15 of these foreigners, and they would go up to the door, knock on the door, and say, "Look, we really appreciate your sensitivity on this issue for wanting to allow the immigrants to come into the country, and just anytime they want to. They really need a place to stay for a few weeks, and we're hoping that you would allow them to stay at your house for a little, sleep in the garage, or if you have a spare bedroom." You should have seen the reaction of these people.
Yeah.
So they can stand up and spout these moral platitudes, but when it comes down to themselves having to sacrifice or recognizing the actual ultimate consequences of this, they want nothing to do with it. "I'm sorry, but we don't have the room. We have too much going on here. We're thinking about moving, so it wouldn't work here. So sorry."
Yeah, unbelievable. Well, I definitely think some of the agitators are paid, but I do believe that there is some kind of sick mind virus propaganda that has happened um, to a lot of these people, because I think a lot of them are doing it of their own volition because of being propagandized. But anyway, we are praying for the folks there in Minnesota. We're praying for ICE and federal law enforcement. We're praying that the police on the ground are actually helpful and not hindering things by strangely being in support of the protesters. Um, yeah,
None of this opposition, Danielle, in Minnesota, none of it is organic. It is
no,
all paid agitators,
it.
all of it.
Well, I think that there are people who are following along the paid agitators. I don't think they're 100% paid. I don't. Just because I can see that there are people who are who are going to protest that I don't believe would be paid.
The prime movers,
Yeah.
prime movers are paid agitators.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, Chris, a couple of announcements before we go. One, the Warrior Circle is open. This is our subscription program for the State of Freedom. If you want to support us, if you love what we're doing here and want to help us keep the lights on, please go to join.freedomstate.us. We are still working out the kinks for the technology on that. So if you are already a subscriber, thank you and bear with us. We are getting there. But if you want to support us, we would love for you to do that. We would appreciate it so much. And then on tomorrow, for the love of freedom, Sean Briscom will be back with me to talk about how to best position yourself financially amidst all the uncertainty that's going on. We're going to be talking about the fraud, the Federal Reserve, what's happening with precious metals. So you won't want to miss that. And then Thursday, a favorite of our audience here, Professor Dave Clements, is scheduled to come back with us and talk about current events. And I imagine he too will have Tina Peters at the top of his mind. I'm sure we'll be talking about her. And lastly, we have some upcoming events in Louisiana featuring Mark Cook. Y'all, he came on and shared with us last week some updates with election security, and he is doing events across the state. I know, Chris, I believe there's one in Baton Rouge that you are hosting. Let me put up the graphic for that.
Yeah. Very excited about this with Mark Cook. Nobody, Danielle, knows more about the vulnerabilities of electronic voting or what to do about it than Mark Cook. He's an encyclopedia of knowledge. He's traveling the country right now, Danielle, in a tractor trailer, drawing on his own savings to do this, driving around by himself with his Handmark Roadshow. And it is just extraordinary what he's doing. He's a great patriot. And on Sunday evening, 6 p.m., Grace Life Fellowship Church in Baton Rouge, he will be there, and he will be talking to people about this very issue. If you live in Baton Rouge or in this area, I would strongly encourage you to attend this. It'll be very enjoyable and very informative. Mark's a great guy and a real patriot. So please try to make this event. And Danielle, there's another one we can put up at some point. There's a couple of Zoom calls that are scheduled, and there are also a couple of meetings on the 3rd over in one in St. Tammany and one in Orleans Parish on February 3rd. Similar meetings, and there's an opportunity here to gain real knowledge about our election system, which, as you said, Danielle, is hugely important, the most important issue of the day. And there's no one to present it any better than Mark Cook.
Yeah, it's true, Chris. And I would also encourage people to go to Mark's website. I was flashing it up here. It's handcountroadshow.org to see if there's any events that he will be hosting or participating in near you. I'm sure he has those Zoom calls up there. And I would just encourage you, if it's a public event, try and get your clerk of court or your registrar of voters there. Try and get some local officials there, because we need people we need them to understand what's at stake. And I really don't think many of them do, Chris. I think, a lot of our clerks of court and registrar of voters are very earnest, very honest, good, hardworking people who just kind of follow the rules. And I believe that we need to be part of making sure that they understand the full scope of their responsibilities with respect to potential vulnerabilities in the election system.
Couldn't agree with you more. I think a lot of them, Danielle, don't fully understand what's going on, don't fully understand how vulnerable it is. Keep in mind what Alex Halderman and other cyber experts have said. They said the fraud that is occurring in these electronic voting systems is so sophisticated and so subtle that even the election officials cannot detect it.
Yeah.
Even they don't know how to find it. So it's truly it is so risky what we're doing now. I'm hoping, Danielle, that President Trump will come out with something between now and the midterms that addresses this issue, because there is no more important issue. And I hope that Mark Cook is somehow through his pipeline getting a word to President Trump. I think President Trump is aware of the issue. I truly believe it.
Yeah.
And he may be facing obstacles on this issue as he is on others with his own administration. So we'll see. We have to continue to pray for President Trump for sure.
Yep, we do. Absolutely. And time will tell. So all we can do is what we can do. So pray and get busy in your community.
Absolutely. Well, Danielle, it's always a pleasure being with you. An hour and 31 minutes. And it feels
I
like
know.
it's been about 30 seconds. So I look forward to seeing you again soon. And let's continue moving forward every day.
God bless you, Chris. I'll see you back here on Thursday.
Yes, ma'am. Blanco Brothers has been in business in Louisiana for about 30 years now. I have personal experience with this company, and I know others who have as well. If you have a business or a home and you've got roofing, gutter, sheet metal issues at all, one number you need to know, and that's Blanco Brothers Construction. He will treat you right financially, and he will take very good care of you with regard to the quality of the service that he provides. I cannot recommend Blanco Brothers Construction more highly enough. Memorize the number 225-226-4222. Let him work with your insurance company and let him treat you right if you have a problem. There's no more important commodity on your home than your roof. And, when there's a problem with it, you need to be able to trust, both financially and with respect to the workmanship, who is doing your work. Blanco Brothers Construction, the very best in the business.
If you're looking to invest in physical precious metals or convert your 401k to a precious metals backed IRA, please consider making your investment with our trusted partner, Metal Stacks. Their prices regularly beat the big sites, and they have no credit card fees or minimums. Shipping is free for orders over $500. Just visit metalstacks.com/dwalker or get there from our website, freedomstate.us. If you're interested in the IRA conversion, drop me a message at Danielle@freedomstate.us and I can get you connected with their white glove service. Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Be sure and check out the show notes for this episode. You can always go there and find the calls to action and resources mentioned in the show, and you can find out more information about our advertisers there as well. If you want to learn more about us or support our work, visit freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org. We'll see you next time. God bless.